When Marcus Thompson accepted the job to protect Tyler Hamilton, he thought it would be just another security assignment for a spoiled billionaire heir. The experienced former military man was prepared to deal with paparazzi, stalkers, and the usual dangers surrounding the ultra-rich's children. What he didn't expect was to find a 22-year-old spiraling out of control, spending millions on reckless whims, throwing parties that ended in scandal, and making decisions that seemed calculated to destroy both his life and his family's reputation. Between wrecked luxury cars, humiliating public confrontations, and nights that ended in spectacular disasters, Marcus realized the biggest threat to Tyler Hamilton wasn't coming from outside, it was coming from within. Now, the man hired to be a bodyguard will have to figure out how to save someone who seems determined to self-destruct, even if it means facing demons far beyond any military training he's ever had.
Hello. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like. At the end, please rate the story. I will be happy to respond to you in the comments. Now, let's get to the story.
The elevator rose silently through the floors of the Manhattan skyscraper, each number flashing on the digital display making Marcus Thompson grip the handle of his worn leather briefcase a little tighter. 35 years old, broad shoulders still carrying the impeccable military posture. He watched his distorted reflection in the polished elevator doors. Dark hair cut close, neatly trimmed beard, green eyes that had seen more than any man should in 2 lifetimes. The metallic sound of the elevator stopping on the top floor echoed like a warning bell. Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the cold air conditioning against his face. His hands, hardened by years of holding weapons and protecting important people in war zones, gripped the briefcase handle firmly as the doors opened, revealing a white marble corridor that looked more like a museum than the entrance to a residence. His footsteps echoed down the hallway to the only door at the end, a massive piece of mahogany with gold details that probably cost more than most people made in a year. Marcus pressed the doorbell, the melodic chime reverberating on the other side. He waited. Nothing. He pressed it again, this time holding the button a few seconds longer. Finally, the door opened, revealing an older man in an impeccable suit, gray hair slicked back, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Thompson, I presume?" The voice was refined, each word pronounced precisely. "I'm James, the house manager. Mr. Hamilton is resting. Please, come in." Marcus followed James through an entrance hall that could easily fit an entire family. The marble beneath his feet was so polished it reflected the lights from the crystal chandelier hanging from the high ceiling. The air smelled like a strange mix, expensive cleaning products blended with something he couldn't immediately identify. "I should warn you," James murmured as they walked. "Mr. Tyler had a lively night. It might be best to familiarize yourself with the environment before meeting him." When they entered the main room, Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. What was supposed to be a luxurious living room looked more like a battlefield after a wild party. Empty champagne bottles, some still with astronomical price tags, were scattered everywhere. One had tipped over on the white leather sofa, leaving a dark stain that would probably cost thousands to fix. Designer clothes were thrown on the floor as if a hurricane had swept through. A blue silk shirt hung from the arm of an armchair, while a tuxedo was crumpled near the unlit fireplace. Expensive Italian shoes were abandoned in random corners of the room, one precariously balanced on the edge of the glass coffee table. The smell Marcus hadn't been able to identify before was now clear. A sickening mix of spilled champagne, expensive perfumes, and something that smelled like cigarette smoke but was different. Sweeter. More medicinal. "My God," Marcus murmured, more to himself than to James. "Mr. Tyler is creative in his ways of entertaining," James said diplomatically, as if describing an eccentric art collector instead of a young man who apparently lived like there were no consequences in this world. Marcus walked slowly through the room, his trained eyes automatically cataloging every detail. In Afghanistan, he'd learned that the environment always told a story. Who had been there, what had happened, how dangerous the situation was. Here, the story was one of runaway excess and total chaos. A wall-sized flat-screen TV was still on, the volume low, showing morning news. Marcus noticed it was 3:15 in the afternoon. Through the panoramic window, Manhattan stretched out like a sea of concrete and glass under the afternoon sun, the city pulsing with life while his new charge apparently slept the day away. "Does he always wake up at this time?" Marcus asked, his voice heavy with disbelief. "Mr. Tyler keeps Unusual hours, James replied, adjusting a tie that was already perfectly straight. He rarely gets up before 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Last night was particularly busy. There was a party here. It lasted until 6 in the morning. Marcus felt a flash of irritation creeping up his spine. For the past 10 years, he'd woken up at 5 every morning, no matter where in the world he was. Discipline was the foundation of everything: protection, survival, sanity. How the hell was he supposed to protect someone who lived like the basic rules of reality simply didn't apply to him? "Where is he now?" Marcus asked, setting his briefcase down next to an armchair that looked untouched by the destruction around it. "In his quarters. Shall I wake him?" Marcus nodded, watching James disappear down a hallway lined with artwork likely worth more than Marcus had earned in his entire military career. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning and distant traffic noise far below. He walked to the window, hands in his dress pants pockets, watching the city. In Kabul, he protected diplomats who woke at 5 a.m., exercised at 6, and were at their desks by 7. Serious people with serious purpose, in situations that required total focus. Here, he was babysitting a rich kid who apparently thought life was one endless party. The sound of heavy footsteps in the hall made Marcus turn. Moments later, James reappeared, followed by a figure that made Marcus question what he was seeing. Tyler Hamilton looked about 22 but behaved like he was 16. Blonde hair sticking out every which way, like he'd stuck a finger in an electrical socket. He wore only black silk boxer briefs and a white t-shirt that was obviously inside out, tags flapping against his skinny chest. His blue eyes were swollen and red, and he walked as if the floor was made of broken glass. "So you're the new babysitter?" Tyler muttered, his voice hoarse and thick with irritation. He threw himself onto the champagne-stained sofa without even noticing the dampness immediately soaking his shirt. "How old are you? 40? 50? 35, Marcus replied calmly, keeping his voice neutral despite the obvious insult. "I'm Marcus Thompson." Tyler appraised him from head to toe, an expression mixing boredom and contempt. "Let me guess, ex-military, right? You all look like you came off the same assembly line. Stiff posture, serious stare, probably have some medals tucked away at home and think that means something in the real world." Marcus felt his jaw muscles tighten but kept his face neutral. "I served 12 years in the Marine Corps. Personal protection for the last 6. "Wow, how impressive," Tyler said, his words dripping with sarcasm. "Well, here's the deal, Marcus Thompson. I didn't ask for a bodyguard. I don't want a bodyguard. I don't need a bodyguard. But apparently my dad's company board thinks I'm a child who needs constant supervision." Tyler stood up abruptly, wobbling slightly before steadying himself. "So here's the deal, you stay out of my way, I stay out of yours, and we all pretend this makes sense." "Got it. My job is to protect you," Marcus said simply. "That means I go where you go." Tyler laughed, a rough sound with no joy in it. "Protect me from what? Paparazzi? Waiters serving warm champagne? The most dangerous thing in my life is tripping over my own clothes." Marcus watched Tyler walk to a side table where a half-empty whiskey bottle sat beside a crystal glass. It was nearly 3:30 in the afternoon, and the kid was pouring himself a generous shot like it was water. "Look," Tyler said, turning with the glass in hand. "I'm sure you're very good at what you do. Probably saved important lives and did heroic things in countries whose names I can't even pronounce. But this," he gestured vaguely around the wrecked room. "This is New York. This is money. This is real power. And you have no clue how it works." Marcus stayed silent, his green eyes fixed on Tyler as the young man took a sip of whiskey, wincing as if the alcohol burned. "There's a party tonight in Soho," Tyler continued, his voice gaining a challenging tone. "A real party, not one of those boring things my dad organizes. There'll be music, drinks, interesting people, and—" he paused, a mischievous smile crossing his lips. "Real fun. You can stay here and polish your military boots or whatever it is you do to pass the time." Tyler disappeared down the hall, leaving Marcus alone with James, who had stayed discreetly near the entrance throughout the conversation. "Is he always like this?" Marcus asked, Mr. Tyler is challenging, James replied diplomatically. He uses rebellious behavior as a form of protection. There have been others before you. Other security guards? 5 in the last 2 years. None lasted more than 3 months. Marcus felt a familiar weight settle on his shoulders, the responsibility for a life that didn't want protection. In Afghanistan, he protected diplomats who understood that their lives depended on him. Here, he was dealing with someone who saw protection as a personal inconvenience. The sound of running water came from the hallway, followed by loud music, something with an electronic beat that made the windows vibrate slightly. Marcus went back to the window, watching the normal people on the streets below living their normal lives. 40 minutes later, Tyler reappeared transformed. The disheveled young man had turned into someone who looked like he stepped out of a fashion magazine. Perfectly tailored black suit, blonde hair now slicked precisely, leather shoes shining like mirrors. Even his eyes looked clearer, though Marcus suspected that had more to do with eye drops than natural recovery. "Well," Tyler said, adjusting his shirt cuffs like he was preparing for a performance. "It was good meeting you, Marcus. I'm sure you'll find something to do while I'm gone. Maybe organize this mess. Consider it part of your training." Tyler headed for the door, but Marcus stepped forward, subtly blocking his path. "Where are you going?" Marcus asked. "Oh, now you want to know?" Tyler smiled, but there was a coldness in his eyes that didn't match the casual expression. "What a surprise. I'm going to a party, Marcus. ARTY. That's where people my age have fun. You probably don't know the concept. My job is to accompany you. Your job is to do what I say," Tyler retorted sharply. "And I'm saying you stay here and, I don't know, do push-ups or whatever ex-military guys do for fun." Marcus stood still, eyes fixed on Tyler. The board was very clear about the instructions. "I go where you go." Tyler huffed, a genuine frustration crossing his face for the first time. "You know what? You're all the same. Think you can control me like I'm a kid. Well, here's a newsflash. I'm 22, legally an adult, and have enough money to buy and sell you 10 times over before breakfast." "Money doesn't stop bullets," Marcus said simply. "Bullets?" Tyler laughed, but the sound was forced. "Do you really think anyone's going to shoot me at a penthouse party in Manhattan? Paranoia is a disease, Marcus. You should seek professional help." Tyler moved to pass Marcus, but the ex-military man didn't budge. For a moment, the two men stared at each other. Tyler with his blue eyes flashing anger and frustration, Marcus with the calm, determined expression of someone who'd faced much worse. "Get out of my way," Tyler said, voice low and dangerous. "I can't do that." "You can't or won't?" "Both." Tyler stayed silent for a long moment, and Marcus saw the calculations happening behind the young man's eyes. Finally, Tyler stepped back, his face turning into a mask of calculated indifference. "You know what, Marcus Thompson?" Tyler said, suddenly too calm. "You're right, completely right. I should have protection. After all, I'm such a valuable target. So come on, come to the party. See what the real world is like." Tyler walked to the side table and grabbed car keys, a golden keychain that probably cost more than most people made in a month. But when you realize you're wasting your life protecting someone who doesn't need protection, don't say I didn't warn you. The limousine glided through the streets of Manhattan like a black shark cutting through dark waters. Marcus sat on the leather seat watching Tyler through the partition glass. The young man had called 3 different people during the 20-minute ride, each conversation louder and more animated than the last. His voice echoing through the cabin as he gestured with a champagne glass that had appeared out of nowhere. Yeah, I'll be there in 10 minutes, Tyler shouted into the phone, champagne spilling slightly onto his suit pants. "Bring the money. Lots of money. Tonight's my lucky night. I can feel it." Marcus felt a knot tighten in his stomach. In his experience, when someone talked about luck with such conviction, it was usually a sign that disaster was near. He discreetly checked the Glock pistol hidden in the holster under his jacket. A habit as automatic as breathing. Club Azure was exactly the kind of place Marcus both expected and feared. The discreet facade in Soho concealed what was clearly the playground of New York's rich and famous. A line of young people wearing outfits that cost more than cars stretched along the sidewalk, but Tyler breezed past them all, greeting the doorman like old friends. "Tyler, man, you're late," the doorman said with a smile, a massive man with shoulders that looked carved from granite, as he opened the door. "It's already crazy inside." "Perfect," Tyler replied, adjusting his jacket and running a hand through his blonde hair. "Oh, this is Marcus, my new assistant." Marcus noticed Tyler's deliberate pause before the word assistant, as if he was enjoying the mislabel. He nodded briefly to the doorman, his eyes already scanning the scene as he followed Tyler inside. The club's interior exploded on his senses like a sensory bomb. Electronic music pulsed so loud Marcus could feel the beat reverberating in his chest. Colored lights sliced through artificial fog that smelled like a mix of expensive perfumes and something he couldn't identify. The place was packed with people who looked like they'd stepped out of a movie about Manhattan's nightlife. Young, beautiful, and dressed as if money was a concept foreign to their lives. Tyler navigated the crowd like he owned the place, greeting people, kissing cheeks, always with that smile that never quite seemed genuine. Marcus followed closely, his trained eyes automatically cataloging emergency exits, potential threats, and the crowd's general behavior. "Tyler Hamilton," a female voice shouted over the music, and a woman with dark hair and a dress that looked painted onto her body approached. "I thought you were dead or something. Haven't seen you in weeks." "Sophia, darling," Tyler said, kissing both her cheeks. "I've been busy being a productive member of society. You know how it is." Sophia laughed, a crystal-clear sound that somehow cut through the auditory chaos. "Of course. I heard you've got a new babysitter. Where is he?" Tyler vaguely gestured toward Marcus. "There," trying to look intimidating and probably calculating how many people he could take down if needed. Marcus kept a neutral expression, though inside he felt growing irritation at the way Tyler presented him like a particularly annoying pet. "Let's drink," Tyler announced, heading toward the bar. "Tonight's a special night. I can feel luck running through my veins." The bartender, a serious-looking man with tattoos covering both arms, smiled when he saw Tyler approach. "The usual, Mr. Hamilton?" No. Tonight I want something special. Something that matches my mood." Tyler drummed his fingers on the polished marble counter. "Bring me a bottle of your best champagne. No, 2 bottles. And..." He paused, looking at Marcus. "What do you drink, Marcus? Beer? Something strong and manly?" "Water," Marcus replied. Tyler snorted. "Water, of course. Bring water for my assistant. Make sure it's the most expensive brand you have." The next 2 hours were a roller coaster of rising tension. Marcus watched Tyler consume worrying amounts of alcohol, his voice growing louder, his movements more exaggerated, and his decisions increasingly impulsive. The young billionaire seemed to have 2 modes: superficial charm when speaking to acquaintances, and rising aggression when he thought no one was paying attention. "Tyler, man, did you see the photos on Instagram?" A dark-haired young man with a predatory smile approached, holding up a cell phone. "The ones from last week? Some blogs are saying interesting things about you." Marcus saw the immediate change in Tyler's expression. The smile vanished, eyes narrowed, a tension appeared in his shoulders that hadn't been there moments before. "What kind of things?" Tyler asked quietly, his voice low and dangerous. "Oh, the usual. Parties, drinking, some interesting company." The young man smiled as if sharing a joke, but there was something malicious in his eyes. "Nothing that'll ruin your reputation. At least no more than it already is." Marcus saw Tyler clench his fists, anger gathering on his face like a storm forming. He stepped forward, subtly positioning himself between Tyler and the provocateur. "Maybe we should head somewhere else," Marcus murmured to Tyler, keeping his voice low. "No," Tyler replied, pushing Marcus aside. "I want to hear what Jason has to say." "Come on, Jason. Share your fascinating theories about my life." Jason, apparently encouraged by the attention, continued. "Well, there are rumors your dad's thinking of cutting your access to the trust fund. That maybe you finally crossed some lines you can't uncross. The music kept pulsing, the lights kept flashing, but Marcus could feel the tension concentrating around them like a magnetic field. Others began to notice the conversation, gathering with the morbid curiosity the rich often have for someone else's drama. Interesting, Tyler said, his voice artificially calm. 'Cause I was thinking maybe you're just a jealous parasite living off gossip because you don't have a life of your own. Tyler, Marcus said, his voice carrying a warning tone. No, Marcus, let me make this clear. Tyler stepped forward, standing face to face with Jason. My dad can try to control me, the board can try to control me, but little worms like you? You're just entertainment. Jason laughed, but there was tension in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Man, it was just a joke. Chill. It was just a joke. Tyler repeated, mocking Jason's tone. How funny. You know what else is funny? Someone like you thinking you have the right to comment on my life. Marcus saw the situation deteriorate fast. The circle of bystanders was growing, some holding phones, others watching with that fascination people have for car crashes. He also noticed some paparazzi had gotten inside the club. Middle-aged men with expensive cameras trying to blend in with the young crowd. Tyler, Marcus said firmly, placing a hand on the young man's shoulder. Let's step outside for a bit. Get some air. Tyler turned to him, and for a moment Marcus saw more than anger in his eyes. There was pain, confusion, and a vulnerability the young man was desperately trying to hide. You don't understand, Tyler said, his voice almost lost in the music. They're always talking, always judging, always thinking they know who I am based on photos and rumors and… I know, Marcus said calmly, but hitting him won't fix anything. It'll just give them more ammunition. Tyler looked at Jason, who now seemed genuinely worried about where the conversation was headed. For a moment, Marcus thought he'd calmed him down. Then Tyler smiled, a smile that was pure malice. You know what, Marcus? You're right. Violence never solves anything. Tyler turned to Jason. Sorry, man. You're right. I'm a mess. My life's a disaster. My dad probably should cut me off. Jason visibly relaxed, beginning to smile as if he'd won some kind of contest. So, Tyler continued, how about we prove that? Let's play some poker. You and me. Interesting stakes. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Tyler, no. Yes. Tyler shouted, raising his arms like he was celebrating. Let's go to the private lounge. Poker. $50,000 per hand. Let's see who's really got guts. The crowd around them erupted in excited murmurs. $50,000 was an impressive sum, even by the club's standards. Marcus saw Jason's eyes widen, clearly not expecting the situation to escalate like this. Dude, I don't… Jason started. Oh, now you don't want to play. Tyler laughed, the sound rough and unpleasant. What a shame. I thought you were braver. But that's okay. I'm sure someone here's got enough nerve to bet with me. I'm in, a voice said from the other side of the circle. Marcus turned to see an older man, maybe in his 40s, with gray hair and a suit clearly costing more than most people make in a year. Charles Bradford. I know your dad. Tyler smiled, but something wild flickered in his eyes, making Marcus feel like he was watching a man about to jump off a cliff. Perfect, Tyler said. Let's play. The club's private lounge was a world apart from the chaos outside. Low music, soft lights, an atmosphere brimming with money and power. The poker table sat center stage, surrounded by leather chairs that looked imported from some exclusive London club. Marcus positioned himself against the wall, where he could see both the table and the door. His eyes scanned the room, 2 exits, several people who could pose threats, and a growing sense that this night was far from over. Tyler threw himself into one of the chairs like he owned the place, accepting a glass of whiskey from a waiter who appeared silently. Charles Bradford took the seat opposite, his movements calculated and precise. Simple rules, Tyler announced, his voice slightly slurred from the alcohol. Texas Hold'em, $50,000 per hand. No time limit. We play until one of us quits or runs out of money. Marcus watched Tyler pull a checkbook from the inside pocket of his jacket, writing a number that made several people in the room choke. $50,000. Written as casually as someone might jot a tip. "You sure about this?" Charles asked, polite but with a hint of concern. "Your dad might not approve." "My dad," Tyler said, taking a big sip of whiskey, "can kiss my spoiled rich ass." The first three hands were relatively calm. Tyler won one, Charles won two, and Marcus began to wonder if the young man had some strategy hidden under all the recklessness. Then came the fourth hand. Tyler looked at his cards, and Marcus saw something change in his expression. Intense concentration appeared in his eyes, like he just spotted something no one else could see. He looked at Charles, then at his cards again, then at the pile of money in the center of the table. "I'll raise," Tyler said calmly. 50,000 more. A murmur ran through the small crowd gathered to watch. $100,000 was now in the pot, a sum that could buy a house in many parts of the country. Charles studied Tyler for a long moment, his experienced eyes trying to read any sign of a bluff. "Either you've got a very good hand or you're completely crazy." "Maybe both," Tyler replied, smiling. "Life's about risks, Charles. People like us didn't get here playing it safe." Marcus watched the exchange, feeling the tension stretch in the room like a taut rope. He'd seen Tyler impulsive before, but this was different. There was something almost self-destructive in the way the young man was acting, like he was testing the limits of his own luck. Charles finally decided. "I'll call." The cards were revealed. Tyler had a full house. Charles had a flush. Tyler had won $100,000 in a single hand. The room erupted in applause and shouts, but Marcus noticed Tyler didn't look particularly pleased with the win. If anything, he seemed almost disappointed. "Another hand," Tyler announced, pushing all the money he'd won back into the center. 200,000. All or nothing. "Tyler," Marcus said, stepping forward. "Maybe it's time to stop." Tyler looked at him with a gaze that was part challenge, part desperation. "No, I'm just getting started," Tyler finished, with a manic glint in his eyes. Charles leaned back slightly in his chair, now sizing up the young man more cautiously. The waiter hesitated as he tried to clear the empty glasses from the table, seeming to sense the weight of what was at stake. 200,000, Tyler repeated, pushing the stack of chips and bills forward like he was betting candy. Not a small fortune. "You got guts for this, Charles? Or are you gonna run like everyone else?" Marcus felt the atmosphere in the room shift. This was no longer just a bet between bored rich people. It had become a silent declaration of war, against the father, against the system, against Tyler himself. Charles looked at his cards, then at Tyler. He sighed. "All right, all in." The dealer dealt the cards. Everyone held their breath. Marcus couldn't take his eyes off Tyler. The young man sat motionless, whiskey glass still in hand, but his expression was that of someone standing at the edge of an abyss. The final cards were revealed. Charles had three of a kind. Tyler a straight. Tyler won again. The room burst into murmurs and exclamations, but Tyler didn't celebrate. He just leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling, as if waiting for something, anything, to bring him relief. But none came. "I guess I've made my point," he murmured, standing up with a detached air. "Money buys everything, except peace." He left the room before anyone could say anything, leaving Marcus and everyone else with the bitter taste of a victory that felt more like surrender. Marcus followed silently, the echo of Tyler's footsteps sounding like drumbeats at an invisible funeral. The first week turned into 2, then 3, then a whole month of relentless chaos. Marcus began marking the days like a prisoner marks time, each morning bringing a new potential disaster, each night ending with him picking up the pieces of what Tyler had broken during the day. The bright red BMW i8 arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a dealer who looked more nervous than excited. Marcus watched from the penthouse window as Tyler, still in pajamas with messy hair, signed the papers as if autographing a photo. $2 million. Just like that, the salesman explained the controls, safety features, the importance of getting familiar with the car before driving at high speed. Tyler waved him off, clearly not hearing a single word. "Let's take it for a spin," Tyler announced, tossing the keys in the air and catching them with a smile that made Marcus's stomach churn. "Maybe you should wait until you're more awake," Marcus suggested, noticing Tyler had been drinking whiskey for breakfast. If 3 in the afternoon could be called breakfast. Awake. Tyler laughed, that rough laugh Marcus had come to associate with impending bad decisions. "Marcus, I have never been more awake in my life. Did you see this car? It's a work of art. Precision machine. You don't leave a precision machine sitting in the garage." Marcus tried to argue, but Tyler was already heading to the elevator, wearing only sweatpants and a t-shirt, his bare feet tapping on the cold marble. 15 minutes later, Tyler was racing the BMW through the streets of Manhattan like it was a racetrack. Marcus, gripping the leather seat, watched the speedometer climb 60, 70, 80 miles per hour on streets with a 30-mile-an-hour limit. The roar of the engine was deafening. Wind rushing through the open windows turned conversation into an impossibility. "Tyler," Marcus shouted over the noise. "Slow down." Tyler looked at him with wide eyes full of adrenaline and something else, something close to destructive euphoria. "Relax, Marcus. This is life. This is real freedom." The crash happened on Park Avenue. Tyler tried to pass a taxi, misjudged the distance, and the world exploded in the sound of twisting metal, tires screeching on asphalt, and shattering glass. Marcus felt the impact like a punch to the chest. His body slammed against the side of the car as they spun 1, 2, 3 times before finally stopping against a lamppost. The silence afterward was almost worse than the chaos. Marcus quickly checked Tyler for injuries, some superficial cuts, probably a mild concussion, before stepping out to assess the damage. The BMW, a precision machine 15 minutes earlier, now looked like a wounded beast, steam rising from the crumpled hood. One will completely destroyed. "Damn," Tyler muttered, staggering out of the car. Damn. Marcus was already on the phone, calling the Hamilton family lawyer, the insurance company, the dealership, anyone who might help turn this public disaster into something manageable. As he spoke, he saw Tyler approach the taxi driver, a middle-aged man with an expression of absolute panic. "Are you okay?" Tyler asked, his voice carrying a surprising note of genuine concern. I think so," the driver replied, checking his own injuries. "But my car." "Don't worry about the car," Tyler said quickly. "I'll take care of everything. New car, all medical expenses, everything." 2 hours later, they were back at the penthouse. Tyler had written a $50,000 check for the driver, handled the police with a charm that seemed genuine, and managed to avoid any serious charges. But Marcus could see something had changed. Tyler was quieter, more withdrawn, as if the reality of what might have happened had finally pierced his bubble of privilege. "I could have killed him," Tyler muttered, flopping onto the couch with a glass of whiskey that appeared in his hand like magic. "Could have killed both of us." "Yeah," Marcus answered simply. "You could have." Tyler looked at him with an expression Marcus couldn't decipher. "You're not going to lecture me? Not going to tell me how stupid and reckless I was?" Marcus shook his head. "You already know. Thursday's party was different. Bigger, wilder, more out of control." Tyler had decided to celebrate being alive by inviting what seemed like half of Manhattan's young and wealthy population to the penthouse. Marcus watched from his position near the front entrance as people arrived in waves. Models, actors, heirs to fortunes, influencers, and a troubling number of people he couldn't identify. The music was so loud Marcus could feel the vibrations through the floor. Champagne bottles broke with alarming regularity. Someone had set up a DJ booth near the main window, and strobe lights turned the space into something more like an underground nightclub than a residence. Marcus counted at least 200 people crammed into a space built for maybe 50. The smell of spilled alcohol mixed with expensive perfume and something definitely not regular tobacco created an atmosphere that made his eyes water. Tyler was everywhere and nowhere at once. Marcus lost track of him in the crowd, found him dancing on top of a table, lost him again, then spotted him in the master bedroom with people who clearly shouldn't have been there. Every time Marcus tried to approach, Tyler vanished like smoke, laughing with an intensity that didn't seem entirely sane. Things started to spiral around 2 in the morning. Marcus noticed some people were clearly using substances other than alcohol. He saw money exchanging hands, whispered conversations in dark corners, and behavior quickly spinning out of control. Tyler. Marcus finally caught up with him near the kitchen, where the young man was trying to open a champagne bottle with a knife. "I need to talk to you." "Marcus," Tyler yelled, as if he hadn't seen his bodyguard in weeks. "Are you having fun? This is the best party I've ever thrown." "You need to send some people home," Marcus said, having to shout to be heard over the music. "It's getting out of hand." "Out of hand?" Tyler laughed, finally opening the bottle. Champagne sprayed everywhere, soaking his shirt and the floor. "It's a party, Marcus. Parties are meant to get out of hand." That's when Marcus heard something that made his blood run cold. Sirens. Still distant, but definitely closing in. He grabbed Tyler by the arm, feeling immediate resistance. "Police," Marcus said simply. The change in Tyler's expression was instant. The fake smile disappeared, replaced by something close to panic. "Damn, they can't be here. They can't." "They can and they are," Marcus replied, already moving. "We need to clear this out. Now." The next 20 minutes were a race against time. Marcus coordinated an evacuation that felt more like a military operation, using emergency exits, service stairs, and generous bribes to ensure the most problematic guests disappeared before the police arrived. Tyler, to his credit, helped, moving through the party with an efficiency that surprised Marcus. When the officers finally arrived, they found an intimate social gathering of maybe 30 people, all well-dressed, well-behaved, and apparently sober. Tyler spoke to the officers with a charm that seemed genuine, explained he'd received some noise complaints, and offered to make a generous donation to the police charity. An hour later, the police had left, most guests were gone, and Tyler sat amid the wreckage, looking around like he couldn't understand how he had gotten there. "That was fun," he muttered, but there was no conviction in his voice. Marcus didn't respond. He was busy calculating how many laws had likely been broken, how many people might have compromising videos or photos, and how many problems were still to come. The following Friday's charity gala was supposed to be different. A controlled event, supervised, with respectable people and appropriate behavior. Marcus even allowed himself a moment of optimism when Tyler showed up dressed properly. An impeccable tuxedo, neatly combed hair, no trace of alcohol. "See," Tyler said, adjusting his bow tie. "I can be respectable when I want to." The Plaza Hotel was decorated with an elegance that breathed old money. Crystals hung from the ceiling, fresh flowers scented the air, and the kind of people who appeared in society magazines moved gracefully through the main ballroom. Marcus positioned himself discreetly near the wall, watching Tyler navigate the room with a natural ease. For 2 hours, everything went well. Tyler politely chatted with donors, gave a touching speech about the importance of child charity, and even danced appropriately with some of the older ladies in attendance. Marcus began to wonder if maybe there was hope. Then Tyler started drinking. Not his usual destructive binge, but something subtler. A glass here, another there, always with the perfect smile, always social. Marcus watched with growing concern, recognizing the signs, the laughter growing louder, the gestures more exaggerated, the social filter starting to fail. The disaster came during the auction. Tyler had been drinking for 3 hours when they decided to auction a week in a villa in Tuscany. The starting bid was $5,000. Tyler, apparently bored, offered $50,000. $50,000. The auctioneer announced, clearly surprised. "Going once?" "100,000, Tyler shouted, standing up from the table. "Why not? It's for a good cause." Marcus felt his stomach drop. He could see heads turning, murmurs starting, people discreetly pulling out their phones to record. "Mr. Hamilton," the auctioneer said carefully, "are you bidding $100,000? 100,000, 200,000, 500,000, Tyler shouted, waving his arms wildly. "What's the difference? They're just numbers." "Tyler," Marcus whispered, stepping forward. "No." Tyler turned on him, eyes shining with an intensity that was part alcohol, part something much more dangerous. These are my friends, Marcus. Respectable people. People who understand money is meant to be spent. Tyler turned back to the auctioneer. You know what? Forget the villa. I'm donating $1 million. Here, right now. The room fell completely silent. Marcus could hear the sound of phones recording, discreet camera clicks, barely audible whispers asking if they'd heard correctly. $1 million, Tyler repeated, his voice echoing in the silence. For children in need. Because that's what people like me do, right? We throw money at problems until they disappear. Tyler, Marcus said more firmly, placing a hand on his arm. Tyler turned to him with a look that was nearly wild. You think I'm being irresponsible, Marcus? You think I'm wasting money? I think you're drunk, Marcus answered calmly. Drunk? Tyler laughed, the sound echoing through the quiet ballroom. I'm not drunk. I'm awake. For the first time in my life, I'm completely awake. Tyler faced the crowd, raising the champagne glass that had appeared in his hand. You want the truth? The truth is we're all parasites. We live off other people's work, inherit wealth we don't deserve, then pretend we're special because we sign charity checks. Marcus saw the horror growing on the faces around the room. These were people who lived on appearances, on carefully constructed reputations, on a facade of respectability that Tyler was shredding with every word. Tyler, stop, Marcus said. But Tyler was spiraling downward, unable or unwilling to pull back. No, Marcus, they need to hear this. They need to know their money doesn't make them better people. It just makes them rich. That's when Marcus saw something that made him move. Tyler was swaying not just from alcohol but from emotional exhaustion. The young man had burned all his energy performing, rebelling, being everything he thought he was supposed to be, and now was collapsing in public. Marcus acted quickly, catching Tyler just as he began to fall. He grabbed his shoulders, whispered something about fresh air, and started guiding him toward the exit before more damage could be done. Sorry, Marcus said to the stunned crowd. He's not feeling well. In the days that followed, the headlines were relentless. Billionaire heir publicly collapses. Tyler Hamilton, hero or villain? The truth about the young Hamilton's erratic behavior. The photos were worse. Tyler clearly intoxicated, Marcus practically carrying him out, a look of despair frozen on his face. Gossip sites speculated about addictions, mental breakdowns, even possible hospitalization. Investor forums debated the impact Tyler's erratic behavior could have on the company's stock. His name stopped being just a powerful surname, it became a red alert on risk monitoring systems. Tyler, for his part, pretended not to care. Screw them, he said on the third day after the scandal. Sprawled on the penthouse couch, sunglasses on, a bottle of vodka his only company. Let them talk. At least they're talking about me. Marcus, who hadn't slept properly in days, just watched. There was exhaustion in his eyes, but something deeper too. Sadness. That arrogant, impulsive, indestructible kid was turning before his eyes into something broken, lost, too vulnerable to notice his own collapse. This is going to have consequences, Tyler, Marcus finally said. Not just for you, for the company, your employees, your family. Family? Tyler snorted. My dad hasn't seen me in months. My mom only calls when she needs a donation for the museum. Siblings? I have none. You know what I am, Marcus? A trophy heir. A rich extra in a play I never chose. Marcus didn't reply. He knew Tyler was talking more to himself than to him. I can't take it anymore, Tyler whispered, removing his sunglasses. His eyes were red, glassy. I look in the mirror and see nothing. Nothing, Marcus. It was the first time Marcus saw something that truly scared him. Not anger, not recklessness, but emptiness. Maybe it's time to change, Marcus said with quiet firmness. Not for them. For you. Tyler looked at him in silence. For the first time in weeks, he was still for more than a minute. Then he whispered, Promise me one thing? Sure. If I fall, really fall, if I get completely lost, you won't leave me alone. You'll get me out of there, even if it's by force. Marcus nodded, his voice caught in his throat. I promise. The Hamilton Industries boardroom occupied the entire 40th floor of the glass and steel skyscraper that dominated an entire section of the financial district. The walls were clad in dark wood that breathed tradition and power, while floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, seemingly designed specifically to intimidate visitors. A polished mahogany table stretched across the center of the room, surrounded by leather chairs likely costing more than most people earned in a month. Marcus arrived an hour early, as he always did when Tyler had important engagements. He positioned himself discreetly near the entrance, watching board members arrive one by one. Middle-aged and older men and women, all dressed in suits clearly tailored to fit, carrying the aura of authority that came from decades of doing business at a level most people could barely imagine. Patricia Wells arrived 15 minutes before the meeting, and Marcus felt the atmosphere shift the moment she entered. Hamilton family's lawyer was an impressive woman. Silver hair styled in a flawless bun, a navy blue suit that looked forged rather than sewn, and eyes that seemed capable of dissecting souls with a single glance. She greeted the other board members with a professional cordiality that barely masked relentless objectivity. "Where's Tyler?" she asked Marcus, checking a watch probably worth more than a car. "He'll be here," Marcus replied, though deep down he wasn't so sure. Tyler had gotten home at 5 a.m. after a night involving 3 different bars, 2 clubs, and an incident with a paparazzo that Marcus had managed to contain with a mix of diplomacy and a handful of $100 bills. "Better be," Patricia murmured, turning her attention to a folder of documents that looked as thick as a book. "This meeting has been postponed twice. The board is running out of patience." Marcus nodded, glancing at his watch. 5 minutes late. Not unusual for Tyler, but in a context like this, every minute mattered. He discreetly pulled out his phone and sent a text. "Where are you?" Meeting started. The reply came immediately. "On my way. Relax." 10 minutes later, Tyler finally appeared, and Marcus felt his stomach sink the moment he saw him. The young man was dressed appropriately. A dark suit, conservative tie, polished shoes, but something was fundamentally off about his appearance. His hair was slightly tousled, his eyes red and tired-looking, and there was a tension in his movements that suggested he was trying to seem more sober than he really was. "Sorry I'm late," Tyler announced, entering the room with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Terrible traffic." Marcus observed the expressions around the table. Some board members looked irritated, others concerned, and Patricia Wells seemed absolutely furious. Tyler took his seat at the head of the table, the chair that had belonged to his grandfather and great-grandfather before him, and for a moment he seemed smaller than he actually was. "Well," said Richard Thornton, the board chairman, a man in his 60s with a perfectly trimmed gray beard and eyes that had seen decades of business. "Tyler, we're here to hear your vision for the future of Hamilton Industries. We know you have some interesting ideas." Tyler nodded, opening a folder that was empty except for a few sheets of paper that looked hastily scribbled. Marcus could see the notes even from where he stood. Loose words, numbers without context, and what appeared to be a drawing of a bird or maybe an airplane. "All right," Tyler began, his voice slightly hoarse. "Thanks for being here. I know you're all busy people, so I'll get straight to the point." He paused, looking around the table, and Marcus could see him trying to organize his thoughts in real time. Silence stretched for long seconds before Tyler finally continued. "Hamilton Industries," Tyler said, making a vague gesture, "is a company built on solid foundations. My grandfather, my great-grandfather, they understood business. They knew how to build something lasting." Patricia Wells leaned forward slightly, and Marcus could see she was paying close attention to every word, every pause, every gesture Tyler made. "But," Tyler went on, his voice taking on a tone Marcus had learned to associate with bad decisions, "I think we're thinking too small. We're stuck in old paradigms, old ways of doing business. The world's changed, and we need to change with it." "Go on," Richard said, though his expression suggested he was starting to worry about the direction this conversation was heading. Tyler stood up, pacing the room with a nervous energy that made Marcus tense. "You know what's wrong with traditional business? It's boring, predictable. Where's the adventure? Where's the passion?" Tyler, Patricia said, her voice carrying a warning tone. Maybe you could talk to us about specific financial projections or expansion plans. Forget financial projections? Tyler cut her off, turning to her with eyes shining with a mix of enthusiasm and something far more troubling. I have a better idea. An idea that will revolutionize not just our company but our worldview. Marcus felt a sense of impending disaster settle in his stomach. He had seen Tyler in this state before, full of destructive energy, convinced that any idea he had was brilliant simply because it was his. I'm listening, Richard said cautiously. Tyler smiled, a smile of pure unwarranted confidence. Let's sell the company. The silence that followed was so complete Marcus could hear the nearly inaudible hum of the air conditioning, the distant noise of traffic below, and the sound of his own breath. Excuse me, Patricia said, her voice dangerously low. Sell everything, Tyler repeated, making a wide gesture. Liquidate all the assets. Turn decades of hard work into cash. Tyler, Richard said, clearly struggling to keep calm. Are you suggesting we sell a company your family built over 3 generations? Exactly, Tyler shouted, as if Richard had just grasped a particularly brilliant point. 3 generations built this. Now it's time for the 4th generation to do something completely different. Marcus watched the expressions around the table shift from confusion to horror. A gray-haired woman named Margaret Foster, who had worked alongside Tyler's grandfather, looked like she was about to faint. And what? Patricia asked, articulating each word with surgical precision. Do you propose we do with the money? Tyler turned to her with a smile of pure destructive euphoria. We're going on a world tour. Extreme sports. Pure adventure. We'll show the world that the Hamilton generation isn't afraid to live. A world tour, Margaret repeated, her voice nearly a whisper. Yes, base jumping in Switzerland, surfing giant waves in Hawaii, free climbing Everest. We'll document everything, create a brand, inspire people to live life to the fullest instead of being stuck in offices doing this. Tyler gestured disdainfully around the room, to the documents, to the board members themselves. Marcus could see every word causing more damage, building a wall of horror and disapproval that would be impossible to tear down. Tyler, Patricia said, standing slowly, you're proposing we destroy 3 generations of work, put hundreds of employees out on the street, abandon our fiduciary duties to investors, all to finance extreme vacations? They're not vacations, Tyler replied, his voice beginning to show irritation. It's a statement, a revolution, a refusal to accept that our only option is to sit in offices for the rest of our lives, counting money as if that's the only thing that matters. Money, said an older man named Harold Mitchell, is what pays the salaries of 400 employees. It's what funds their families' health plans. It's what keeps this company running. Tyler turned to Harold with a look that was almost wild. And look where that's gotten us. You're all trapped. Trapped in routines, trapped in expectations, trapped in a life with no real meaning. Tyler, Richard said, his voice now carrying an authority Marcus had rarely heard. It's clear you're going through a difficult time. Maybe we should postpone this meeting until you're better prepared. Better prepared? Tyler laughed, the sound echoing around the room like breaking glass. I'm perfectly prepared. You're just not ready to hear the truth. Marcus watched Patricia Wells open her folder and pull out a document that looked official and intimidating. Tyler, as legal counsel for the Hamilton family, I need to remind you that your actions as primary heir affect not just you, but the entire corporate structure your family built. Oh, sure, Tyler said, turning to her with disdain. Legal implications, responsibilities, the weight of expectations. You know what I think about that? Tyler grabbed a glass of water on the table and chugged it, then set it down hard enough to make a noise that startled everyone. I think, Tyler continued, that you're all cowards. Cowards trapped in a golden prison you built yourselves. And you want to drag me into that prison too. Tyler, Margaret said, her voice trembling slightly. Your grandfather. My grandfather's dead, Tyler interrupted brutally. My father is trying to control me through you. and all of you are trying to turn me into another boring businessman who dies at 70 without ever really living. Marcus could see the situation was deteriorating beyond any hope of recovery. Tyler was in a downward spiral of anger and frustration, and every word he spoke was causing more damage to his position, reputation, and future chances. "Mr. Hamilton," Harold said, standing, "with all due respect, you're suggesting we abandon decades of work, destroy your family's legacy, jeopardize the livelihoods of hundreds of people, just to fund what amounts to an expensive personal adventure." "It's not a personal adventure," Tyler shouted, pounding his fist on the table. "It's a statement about what it means to be alive, about what it means to be human instead of just a cog in a corporate machine." Patricia Wells snapped her folder shut with a click that echoed through the room like a gunshot. "Tyler, you are clearly not in a state to make rational decisions about the company's future." "Rational?" Tyler laughed, a sound part hysteria, part desperation. "You want to talk about rational? What's rational about spending your whole life in meetings like this, discussing numbers and projections and quarterly reports like they're the most important thing in the world?" "They are important," Richard said firmly, "because they affect real people's lives. This isn't just about you, Tyler. It's about legacy, about responsibility, about—" "Responsibility," Tyler interrupted, the word coming out venomously. "It always comes back to that, doesn't it? Responsibility, duty, expectations. You know what those words mean to me." He paused, looking around the table, and Marcus could see something broken in his eyes, something beyond the hangover or frustration. "They mean I can never be myself," Tyler continued, his voice lowering but no less intense. "They mean every decision I make, every word I say, every breath I take has to be filtered through what you think is appropriate for the Hamilton heir." "Tyler," Margaret said gently, "no one's trying to take away your individuality." "No." Tyler turned to her. "Then why am I here? Why are you here? Why every time I try to do something different, something real, something that actually matters, do you show up to tell me it's not appropriate?" Marcus studied the room's dynamics, reading faces, body language, and came to a conclusion that worried him deeply. It wasn't just that Tyler was having a breakdown, it was that he was having a breakdown in front of the people with legal power to do something about it. "Tyler," Patricia said, her voice taking on a tone Marcus recognized as dangerously firm, "perhaps we should discuss this privately, after you've had time to consider—" "No," Tyler interrupted, heading for the door. "You want to discuss this? Great. You want to make plans without me? Fantastic. You want to keep pretending this company is about anything other than making money? Go ahead." Tyler stopped at the door, turning to face the room one last time. Marcus could see tears in his eyes, though the young man was clearly fighting to hold them back. "But don't pretend this is about me," Tyler said, his voice broken but still defiant. "This is about you, about your need to control, your need to keep everything exactly as it's always been, your inability to imagine that maybe, just maybe, there's more to life than quarterly profits." Tyler left, the door closing behind him with a sound that felt final. Marcus stood for a moment, watching the room in silence, seeing shock, disappointment, and something dangerously close to despair on the faces of the board members. Patricia Wells was the first to break the silence. She stood slowly, as if every movement carried the weight of decades of institutional duty. Her eyes swept the room, pausing for a second on each board member, assessing, judging, deciding. "He's not fit to lead," she said, her voice low but sharp as a blade. "And if we don't act now, tomorrow may be too late." "What are you suggesting?" Richard asked, though deep down he already knew the answer. "A legal intervention," Patricia replied. "Temporary. A petition to declare Tyler unfit to make executive decisions. We can argue emotional instability and harm to the company's interests." "That's going to be a scandal," Margaret murmured, horrified. "The media will feast on this." "And what do you suggest?" Patricia shot back. "That we wait for him to sell everything to climb Everest and film a documentary about the existential void of the elite?" No one laughed. Marcus remained standing by the door, body tense, eyes fixed on nothing. He knew what this meant. He knew they were about to take from Tyler the one thing he still had, the name, the position, the legacy. But he also knew that if they didn't, Tyler might destroy everything. The company, the family, himself. "Prepare the paperwork," Patricia ordered, putting the documents back in her folder. "And someone keep Marcus updated. He's still the only person Tyler listens to, even if only occasionally." As the board members began murmuring among themselves, organizing the legal strategy to delegitimize the heir himself, Marcus silently left the room. He knew he would need to find Tyler before it was too late. The sound reached Marcus through 3 floors of polished marble and wood, a pulsing, aggressive rhythm that made the crystal chandeliers in the main hall subtly vibrate. He followed the noise through the penthouse corridors, passing empty living rooms and bedrooms that felt more like museums than places to live, until he reached the double doors of Tyler's private gym. The music was so loud Marcus could feel the vibrations through the floor beneath his feet. It was something heavy, industrial, with a beat that seemed designed to block out thought rather than inspire it. He opened the door and was immediately hit by a wall of sound that made his ears ache. Tyler was on the treadmill, running with an intensity that bordered on desperation. Sweat streamed down his bare torso, his hair plastered to his head, and there was something almost violent about the way his feet pounded the treadmill belt. The monitor showed he'd been running for more than 2 hours, maintaining a pace most people couldn't sustain for 15 minutes. Marcus watched for a moment, noticing details that worried him. Tyler's hands were clenched into fists so tight his knuckles had turned white. His breathing was labored, but he seemed to be forcing himself to keep going past what his body wanted. There was something almost punitive about the way he was working out, as if he was trying to punish himself through physical exhaustion. The gym itself was a masterpiece of design and technology. State-of-the-art equipment, mirrors covering entire walls, and a panoramic view of Central Park that would normally be calming. But the current atmosphere was anything but peaceful. There was a destructive energy in the air, a feeling that Tyler was using exercise as a form of warfare against himself. Marcus walked over to the sound system and turned the music off. The silence that followed was almost deafening. Tyler kept running for a few seconds, as if he hadn't noticed the change, before finally slowing to a jog and looking at Marcus with an expression that was part anger, part something close to relief. "What are you doing?" Tyler asked, his voice hoarse from exertion. He didn't stop running, but dropped to a slow trot. "We need to talk," Marcus said, crossing his arms. He had made a decision on the walk to the gym, and now he was committed to it. Tyler let out a humorless laugh. "Talk? About what? About how embarrassed I made all of you today. About how I disappointed the board. About how I'm a failure as the heir. About how you're destroying yourself," Marcus said simply. Tyler finally stopped the treadmill, jumping off with movements that seemed more aggressive than necessary. He grabbed a towel and started wiping sweat off himself, but Marcus could see his hands were trembling slightly. "Destroying myself?" Tyler repeated, disbelief in his voice. "I'm living, Marcus. For the first time in my life, I'm actually living instead of just existing." "You call this living?" Marcus gestured around the room, but he meant much more than just the gym. "You call wrecking a $2 million car living? Publicly humiliating yourself? Suggesting your family sell the company to fund your personal adventures?" Tyler turned to him, eyes shining with a dangerous intensity. "Careful, Marcus. Remember, you work for me." "No," Marcus replied, stepping forward. "I work for your family, and I've been watching you self-destruct for weeks, hoping you'd manage to get control on your own. Clearly, I was wrong." Tyler threw the towel on the floor with enough force to make a wet slap against the marble. "So what do you want me to do? Be the perfect little heir? Sit in boring meetings and nod along with whatever Patricia Wells thinks is best for me?" "I want you to stop acting like a child," Marcus said, his voice gaining an edge he rarely used. "You're 25. You're wealthier than most people can imagine. You have opportunities billions only dream about. And you're throwing it all away because... Why? Because you're bored." Tyler stepped closer, and Marcus saw something feral in his eyes. "You don't get it. You can't. You don't know what it's like to be me." "Then explain," Marcus challenged. Explain to me how hard it is to be Tyler Hamilton. Explain how tough it is to have billions and endless possibilities. Endless possibilities? Tyler laughed, but there was something hollow in the sound. You think I have endless possibilities? I have exactly one option, Marcus. One choice. Be exactly what they want me to be, or be a disappointment. Tyler started pacing the gym, his energy nervous and contained. Do you think that meeting today was about my vision for the company? It wasn't. It was about them checking if I'm going to be a good little soldier. If I'm ready to take over Dad's empire and continue exactly where he left off. And what's wrong with that? Marcus asked. Your family built something incredible. Generations of work, thousands of jobs. A legacy most people would kill for. Because it's not mine, Tyler shouted, turning to him with an intensity that made Marcus take a step back. It's not my dream, not my vision, not my life. It's theirs. It's my grandfather's, it's my father's, it's Patricia Wells. It belongs to everyone except me. Tyler slammed his fist against one of the mirrors, hard enough to echo around the room. Do you know the last time someone asked me what I wanted? What I actually wanted for my life. Not what was expected, not what was appropriate, not what was best for the family, but what I wanted. Marcus watched Tyler struggle with something clearly much deeper than teenage rebellion or privileged boredom. There was real pain in his eyes, real frustration in his movements. So tell me, Marcus said, softening his voice. What do you want? Tyler stopped, staring at him like a deer caught in headlights. I don't. You don't know, Marcus finished. You've spent so much time fighting against what they want that you forgot how to figure out what you want. That's not true, Tyler said, but there was less conviction in his voice. Is it not? Marcus took a step closer. Then why is everything you do about shocking people? Why is every decision designed to upset your family? You're not living your own life, Tyler. You're living in reaction to theirs. Tyler opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Marcus could see he'd hit something, a nerve Tyler didn't even know existed. You crash cars not because you like cars, Marcus continued. You throw parties not because you like parties. You suggest selling the company not because you have a better idea. You do all of this because you know it will upset people. Because upsetting people is the only way you know how to exist. Stop, Tyler said, his voice suddenly quiet. You're drowning, Tyler, and instead of learning how to swim, you're pulling others down with you. Your family, your employees, anyone who cares about you. You're making them all part of your self-destruction. I said stop, Tyler repeated, but there was something different in his voice, something that sounded less like anger and more like a desperate plea. Marcus could see he was getting through, that something was cracking in Tyler's carefully built facade of rebellion and indifference. But he also knew this might be his only chance to really reach him. You know what I think? Marcus said. I think you're scared. I think you're terrified that if you actually try to be good at something, if you try to build something instead of just destroying it, you might fail. And it's easier to fail on purpose than to risk failing while trying your best. Tyler stared at him, and Marcus could see something shift behind his eyes. Some wall going up, some defense kicking in. Some way of protecting himself from facing the truth Marcus was getting close to. You don't know what you're talking about, Tyler said, but his voice cracked slightly. Don't I? Marcus stepped closer. Then why don't you prove me wrong? Why don't you actually try to be good at something? Why don't you try to build something instead of just... Because what if I can't? Tyler shouted, the words bursting out like they'd been held back by a dam finally breaking. What if I try my best and I still fail? What if I actually put effort into something and it's still not good enough? What if I'm actually just... He stopped abruptly, eyes wide as if realizing what he was saying. Marcus saw the exact moment Tyler's defenses slammed back into place, when the vulnerability disappeared behind a wall of practiced indifference. Forget it, Tyler said flatly. You wouldn't understand. Tyler, Marcus started, but Tyler was already walking away, grabbing a shirt from a bench and pulling it over his head. This conversation is over, Tyler said without looking back. I'm going out. Don't follow me. Marcus watched Tyler head for the door and saw something fundamental had shifted. For a moment, Tyler had let his guard down, shown something real and vulnerable and human. Then he slammed it shut again, as if he caught himself making a mistake. "Tyler?" Marcus called out, but Tyler didn't stop. "I said don't follow me," Tyler repeated, his voice warning. Marcus stood alone in the silent gym, surrounded by expensive equipment and mirrors that reflected his own frustrated expression. He had gotten closer to understanding Tyler than ever before, seen beneath the surface of all the performative destruction to something that looked like genuine fear and confusion. But he'd also seen how quickly Tyler could shut down, how practiced he was at building walls around anything that felt too real or too vulnerable. And Marcus realized whatever was driving Tyler's behavior ran much deeper than simple rebellion or privileged boredom. It was fear. Fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, fear of trying and still not measuring up to the expectations placed on him since birth. And Tyler had decided it was easier to fail spectacularly on purpose than to risk failing while actually trying. Marcus listened to Tyler's footsteps fading down the hall, followed by the sound of elevator doors opening and closing. He was alone in the penthouse now, surrounded by the silence Tyler seemed to be running from. For the first time since taking this assignment, Marcus felt he understood what he was really dealing with. This wasn't about protecting Tyler from outside threats or managing his public image. This was about a young man slowly destroying himself because he was too afraid to discover who he really was beneath all the pressure and expectations. And Marcus had no idea how to help someone so scared of vulnerability that he'd rather destroy everything around him than risk showing weakness. The call came at 2 in the morning, from a number Marcus didn't recognize. A young woman's voice, clearly panicked, whispered over the phone. "Tyler is at the Chrysler Building. He's going to jump. You need to come now." Marcus was out of bed and getting dressed before the call even ended. He raced through the empty penthouse hallways, grabbing his car keys and rushing to the elevator. The drive downtown passed in a haze of ignored red lights and angry honks. His heart pounded so loudly he could hear it over the engine's roar. The Chrysler Building rose against the night sky like an Art Deco blade, its architectural lights casting dramatic shadows against the low clouds. Marcus parked illegally on the street and ran to the side entrance, where he found a woman with purple hair and a nose piercing waiting for him. "He's on the rooftop," she said, her words coming in nervous bursts. "We got access through, never mind how. There's a group up there, they're doing urban base jumping. Tyler showed up an hour ago, completely out of it." Marcus followed her through a service entrance, climbing stairs that seemed to go on forever. With every floor, he heard voices from above, laughs with a hysterical edge, and occasional gusts of wind slamming against windows. "He doesn't have the right gear," the woman gasped as they climbed. "The other guys, they've got professional parachutes, years of experience. Tyler showed up with some equipment he bought online. He's not okay." They reached the rooftop, and Marcus was immediately hit by a gust of wind that made him stagger. The top of the Chrysler Building was an alien landscape of iron and stone, the city stretching endlessly in every direction. Manhattan's lights twinkled like fallen stars, and the wind carried the distant sounds of sirens and traffic. A group of 5 people stood near the edge, all dressed in black jumpsuits and gear that looked expensive and professional. Tyler was in the center of the group, and Marcus felt his stomach drop when he saw him. Tyler wore a jumpsuit that looked like it had been made for someone else, loose in some places, tight in others. His helmet was crooked, and the parachute on his back seemed improperly fitted. But what worried Marcus most was Tyler's expression. Wild intensity in his eyes, an energy beyond normal adrenaline, dangerously unhinged. "Tyler!" Marcus shouted, his voice battling the wind. Tyler turned, and Marcus could tell he was under the influence of something. His eyes were dilated, his movements overly animated, his energy feverish. "Marcus!" Tyler yelled back, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You showed up just in time. You're going to see something amazing." Marcus approached cautiously, noticing how the others in the group watched Tyler with a mix of concern and morbid fascination. They knew something was wrong but seemed frozen by the situation. "Care to explain what you're doing?" Marcus asked, trying to keep calm while sizing him up. "I'm living," Tyler replied, spreading his arms as if embracing the entire city. I'm finally doing something that matters. Something real. One of the men, a tall guy with a beard who seemed to be the leader, came up to Marcus. Look, man, I don't know who you are, but your friend shouldn't be here. He showed up insisting on jumping, but he has no experience and his gear is crap, Marcus finished, inspecting Tyler's parachute. This isn't professional gear. This is something someone bought online. It works perfectly, Tyler insisted. Marcus detected a hint of doubt in his voice. I tested everything. Read all the instructions. You tested? Marcus asked, stepping closer. Where? When? At what altitude? Tyler hesitated, and Marcus saw the first crack in his confidence. I did research, studied videos. I know what I'm doing. No, you don't, Marcus said firmly. And these guys know you don't. That's why they're nervous. That's why they called me. Tyler looked around the group and Marcus saw him realize he wasn't as welcome as he'd thought. The other jumpers were clearly uncomfortable, worried he might hurt himself and put them all at risk. They didn't call you, Tyler said, but his voice lacked conviction. They did, Marcus confirmed, because they know you're about to commit accidental suicide, and they don't want to be responsible for it. Tyler stepped away from him, heading toward the edge of the building. I'm tired of everyone telling me what I can't do. Tired of being treated like I'm fragile. You're not fragile, Marcus said, following. You're inexperienced. That's different. Tyler stood at the edge, looking down at the streets far below, seemingly miles away. The wind whipped stronger here, making his poorly fitting gear flap against his body like a flag. Do you know why I'm here? Tyler asked, his voice shifting in a way Marcus couldn't place. Do you know why I have to do this? Tell me, Marcus answered, moving closer. Because if I don't do this, if I don't prove I can do something real, something dangerous, something that matters, then what am I? Just another rich kid who's never done anything meaningful in his life. Tyler turned to him, and Marcus saw tears in his eyes, though he couldn't tell if they were from the wind or something deeper. You think I don't know what people say about me? Tyler continued, that I'm a waste of space, that I'm a disappointment, that I'll never fill my dad's shoes. Tyler, Marcus started, but Tyler cut him off. No, Tyler shouted. Don't try to console me. Don't tell me it's not true, because it is. I am a failure, a disappointment, everything they say I am. Tyler took another step toward the edge, dangerously close to the drop. But if I do this, if I actually pull off something brave, something none of them would have the courage to do, then maybe I can prove I'm worth something. You don't have to almost die to prove your worth, Marcus said, reaching out. You don't have to risk your life to be important. No, Tyler laughed, but hysteria crept into the sound. Then what do I do? Sit through more boring meetings? Pretend I care about quarterly reports? Smile and nod while Patricia Wells tells me how to live my life. Tyler turned back to the edge and Marcus saw him prepare to jump. At least this one thing will be my choice. My decision. Marcus moved. He closed the distance in 2 long strides, grabbing Tyler by the back of his ill-fitting jumpsuit and pulling him away from the edge. Tyler fought him, screaming protests and trying to break free, but Marcus was stronger and more sober. Let me go, Tyler yelled, struggling against Marcus's grasp. You can't stop me. You can't? I can, and I will, Marcus said, holding him firmly as he struggled. You're not dying tonight. Not on my watch. Tyler kept fighting, but Marcus felt his strength fading. It wasn't just physical exhaustion. It was something deeper, like all the energy driving his reckless behavior was suddenly draining away. Please, Tyler whispered, voice breaking. Please, just let me do this one thing. Just let me prove I can. You don't have to prove anything, Marcus said, still holding him. You don't have to risk your life to have worth. Tyler stopped fighting suddenly, his body going limp in Marcus's arms. Then what do I do? He asked, voice so quiet Marcus barely heard it over the wind. If I'm no good at business, no good at being an heir, no good at anything that actually matters, then what do I do? Marcus carefully guided Tyler away from the edge and helped him sit on a concrete ledge safely back from the drop. Tyler's breathing was ragged, not from exertion but something like suppressed sobs. "I don't know who I am," Tyler said, his voice breaking completely. "I don't know what I want. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Everyone expects me to be this person, this heir, this leader, but I don't know how to be that. I don't even know if I want to be that." Tears streamed down Tyler's face now, mixed with the wind, making him look younger than his 25 years. "And everyone keeps telling me I need to grow up, take responsibility, be the man my family needs me to be. But I don't know how to be that man. I don't know how to be any man." Marcus sat beside him, watching as Tyler's carefully constructed facade completely crumbled. The rebellion, the recklessness, the performative destruction. It all fell away, leaving something raw, vulnerable, and utterly lost. "I thought maybe if I did something extreme enough, something dangerous enough, maybe I'd find out who I really am," Tyler continued, words coming in broken bursts. "Maybe I'd discover some hidden strength, some courage, anything that would make me feel like I'm worth something." Tyler looked out over the city, but Marcus could see he wasn't really seeing it. He was looking inward, at something that apparently terrified him more than jumping off a building. "But I'm not brave," Tyler whispered. "I'm not strong. I'm not any of the things a Hamilton heir is supposed to be. I'm just scared. Scared of failing. Scared of trying. Scared of finding out maybe I really am as worthless as I think I am." Marcus watched as Tyler buried his face in his hands, shoulders shaking with sobs he'd apparently held back for months. The dangerous, reckless playboy was gone, replaced by a young man overwhelmed by expectations he'd never learned to meet. The other base jumpers had quietly disappeared, leaving them alone on the rooftop with only the wind and the distant sounds of the city below. Marcus realized this was the moment he'd been waiting for, not when Tyler would finally listen to reason, but when he'd finally be honest about what was really driving his self-destructive behavior. It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't boredom. It wasn't even a death wish. It was fear. Pure, overwhelming fear of not being good enough, of not measuring up, of trying his best and still failing. And Tyler had decided it was easier to fail spectacularly on purpose than risk failing while actually trying. Marcus sat beside him in the wind, watching a young man finally face the terror that had been driving him toward increasingly dangerous behavior. And he realized whatever happened next, this moment on the rooftop had changed everything. The descent of the Chrysler Building happened in complete silence. Tyler had stopped crying, but his hands still trembled as he tried to remove the poorly fitted gear. Marcus helped him with the straps and buckles, noticing how Tyler flinched at every touch, as if his skin was too sensitive for any contact. They reached the car without exchanging a word. Tyler settled into the passenger seat and immediately hunched forward, resting his head in his hands. Marcus drove through the empty streets of Manhattan, the sound of the engine and occasional traffic filling the silence that had fallen between them. It wasn't until they got to the penthouse that Tyler finally spoke. "You're not going to tell Patricia Wells, right?" His voice was hoarse, nearly inaudible. Marcus turned off the engine and faced him. Tyler still hunched over, as if carrying the weight of his own shame was physically exhausting. "No," Marcus answered. "But we need to talk." Tyler nodded without lifting his head. "I know." They went up to the penthouse in silence. Marcus noticed how much smaller Tyler seemed now, as if the bravado and aggressive attitude that usually made him larger than life had been the only things holding him upright. Without them, he looked like what he really was, a young man completely lost. Tyler automatically headed for the bar, but Marcus gently stopped him. "Maybe that's not the best idea right now," he said. Tyler paused, staring at the crystal bottles like they were old friends suddenly turned strangers. "You're right," he murmured. You're right." They sat in the main living room, Tyler choosing a corner of the sofa where he could curl into an almost fetal position. Marcus grabbed a chair and pulled it closer, creating a sense of intimacy that was less intimidating than sitting right beside him. For long minutes, they just sat there in the dim light, with only a few city lights filtering through the enormous windows. Marcus could hear Tyler breathing, deep and shaky breaths that suggested he was struggling to maintain some kind of control. "I don't know where to start," Tyler finally said, His voice so low Marcus had to lean in to hear. "Start wherever you want," Marcus replied. Tyler was silent for a few more moments, then the words began to come out in hesitant, broken bursts. "You know my parents died in a car accident 3 years ago?" He began, still looking at his own hands. "What you probably don't know is that I was supposed to be in that car with them." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach but said nothing. "They were going to a charity event," Tyler continued. "Something boring about children's hospitals or education. I don't remember. I was supposed to go with them, wear a tuxedo, smile for the cameras, be the good son. But I was 19 and thought I knew better." Tyler let out a laugh that held no humor. "I told them I had finals to study for, that I needed to stay home and focus on my studies, that I'd catch up with them later. My mom, she was so proud that I was taking school seriously. She kissed my forehead and said she understood." The words came faster now, like Tyler had held this story in for so long it was desperate to escape. "But I didn't study. I threw a party, invited half of Columbia University, ordered enough alcohol to drown a horse, and spent an entire night doing exactly what I loved most, disappointing them without them knowing about it." Tyler finally looked at Marcus, and there was a pain in his eyes that was almost physical to witness. "I was passed out drunk when the phone rang, totally unconscious, surrounded by people I barely knew, in a house that was completely trashed. And somewhere across town, my parents were bleeding out in twisted metal because I was too selfish to spend one night pretending to care about charity." "Tyler," Marcus began, but Tyler cut him off. "Don't say it's not my fault," Tyler said quickly. "Everyone says that. Everyone tells me accidents happen, that I couldn't have prevented it, that I wouldn't have made a difference. But that's not the point. The point is the last thing I ever said to my mom was a lie. The last impression I gave my dad was that I was responsible and mature. And both of those things were complete bullshit." Tyler stood up abruptly and started pacing the room, his hands gesturing wildly as he spoke. "So suddenly I had $24 billion. $24 billion. Can you imagine that? I was 19 years old, still using fake IDs to buy beer, and suddenly I owned hotels and companies and real estate on 3 continents." He stopped by the windows, looking out over the city spread below them. "And everyone expected me to know what to do. Patricia Wells, the board of directors, the media, all the business partners, they all expected me to step up and be Richard Hamilton Jr. To take over where my dad left off and keep building this empire that took generations to create." Tyler pressed his forehead against the cold glass. "But I didn't know how to be Richard Hamilton Jr. I barely knew how to be Tyler Hamilton. I was just a kid who was good at disappointing people and lying about studying." Marcus could see the tension in Tyler's whole body, the way his shoulders hunched under the weight of expectations he'd never learned to carry. "So I tried," Tyler continued. "For about a year I really tried. I went to meetings, I listened to Patricia Wells, I tried to understand quarterly reports and market analysis and all the other things an heir is supposed to care about. I tried to be serious, to be responsible, to be worthy of everything my parents had built." Tyler turned to Marcus, and there was an exhaustion in his eyes that went beyond physical tiredness. "But I was terrible at it. Absolutely terrible. I couldn't understand half the things people were talking about. I made mistakes that cost money. I said the wrong things in important meetings. I was trying so hard to be someone I wasn't that I was just failing at everything." Tyler sank back onto the sofa, collapsing into it as if his legs could no longer hold him. "And then I started noticing how people looked at me, how they talked to me. Suddenly I had friends I never had before. Suddenly I was interesting to people who never gave me a second glance. Suddenly I was invited to parties, to events, to exclusive things." A bitter expression crossed Tyler's face. "But I realized none of it was real. None of those people actually liked me. They liked my money. They liked my connections. They liked what I could do for them. But Tyler, the real person, they didn't know him and they didn't want to know him." Tyler grabbed a pillow and hugged it to his chest, a gesture that made him look much younger than his 25 years. "I started testing people," he admitted. "I would say outrageous things just to see how they reacted. I would behave badly just to see if anyone would call me out. I would spend ridiculous amounts of money just to see if anyone would question it. And they never questioned, Marcus said, not asking a question. Never, Tyler confirmed. No matter what I did, no matter how inappropriate or reckless or downright stupid, people just smiled and nodded and told me whatever I wanted was great, because I was paying for everything, because I was Tyler Hamilton, and Tyler Hamilton's money was more important than Tyler Hamilton's well-being. Tyler was silent for a moment, and Marcus could hear the distant ticking of a clock somewhere in the penthouse. So I started pushing harder. Tyler went on. If people were going to treat me like an ATM anyway, then I might as well act like one. I started throwing bigger parties, buying more expensive things, taking more risks. Because at least when I was being reckless, at least when I was being dangerous, I could feel something. Tyler looked at Marcus with eyes that seemed far older than they should be. You asked me earlier what I want. The truth is, I don't know. I spent so much time trying to be what other people wanted that I never figured out who I actually am. I don't know what I like, what I'm good at, what makes me happy. I only know what disappoints people and what scares them. And how do you feel now? Marcus asked gently. Tyler thought for a long moment before answering. Lonely, he said finally. Incredibly, overwhelmingly lonely. I'm constantly surrounded by people, but I don't think anyone really knows me. I don't think anyone actually cares about me as a person. I'm just a resource, a bank account that happens to have a personality attached. Tyler shrank further into the sofa. And the worst part is, I don't blame them, because I don't know if there's anything worth knowing. Maybe I really am just an ATM machine. Maybe that's all I ever was, and all I ever will be. Marcus felt a wave of understanding wash over him. All the reckless behavior, the self-destruction, the performative rebellion. It was all Tyler's way of trying to feel something, anything, in a life that had become completely numb. You know what the funny thing is? Tyler continued. I keep trying to live up to my parents' legacy, but I don't even know what that means. I mean, I know they built this empire, that they were successful, that they were respected. But I don't know who they were as people. I don't know if they were happy. I don't know if they felt fulfilled by what they were doing. Tyler looked at Marcus with an expression that was part hopelessness, part plea. I was so busy being the disappointed son that I never bothered to know them as humans. And now they're gone. And I'm trying to honor their memory by becoming someone I don't understand, to carry on a legacy I don't even know if I want. Tyler fell silent for a long moment. Marcus could see he was struggling with something, trying to find words for something he might never have said aloud before. Marcus, Tyler said finally, his voice almost a whisper. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay? Marcus replied. Tyler looked directly at him, and there was a vulnerability in his eyes that was almost painful to see. Do you think I'm completely beyond redemption? Do you think I'm so messed up, so damaged, so fundamentally broken that there's no point even trying to fix me? The question hung in the air between them like something physical, heavy with years of self-doubt and self-loathing that Tyler had carried alone. Because when I look at everything I've done, Tyler continued when Marcus didn't answer right away, I look at all the destruction, all the disappointment, all the missed opportunities and wasted potential, and I think, maybe everyone would be better off if I just disappeared. Maybe the Hamilton legacy would be better served by someone else. Maybe I'm just holding everyone back. Tyler's voice broke on the last sentence, and Marcus could see that question wasn't just casual curiosity. It was something Tyler had been wrestling with for months, maybe years. It was the question driving him toward increasingly dangerous behavior, because if the answer was yes, then maybe it didn't matter what happened to him. Marcus looked at the young man hunched on the sofa, seeing not a spoiled heir or reckless playboy, but someone carrying a burden far too heavy for any 19-year-old to handle alone. Someone drowning in expectations and isolation, trying to find himself in a world where everyone wanted to use him but no one wanted to know him. And Marcus realized his answer to that question would not only determine Tyler's future, but possibly his survival. Marcus was silent for a long moment, studying Tyler's face, the desperate hope mixed with the terror that the answer was the one he feared most. Finally, Marcus got up from the chair and sat down on the couch, but not too close, respecting the space Tyler clearly needed. Do you want me to be honest? Marcus asked. Tyler nodded, though Marcus could see he was bracing for the worst. Then I'm going to tell you a story, Marcus said, about a guy who thought his life was over at 23. Tyler looked at him with cautious curiosity. I wasn't always a security specialist, Marcus began. I was Army, Special Forces. Spent 5 years in Afghanistan, 2 tours in Iraq. I was good at it, really good. I had purpose, structure, brothers who would die for me. I knew exactly who I was and what I was supposed to do. Marcus leaned back, looking up at the ceiling as if seeing something only he could see. Then I stepped on an IED outside Kandahar. Shrapnel in my left leg, concussion that left me with headaches for months. Nothing life-threatening, nothing that would get me a Purple Heart or make me a hero. Just enough damage to end my military career. Tyler straightened up, clearly not expecting Marcus to share something so personal. I was discharged with honors, some medals I didn't feel like I deserved, and absolutely no idea what to do next. I was 23 years old, and the only thing I'd ever been good at was something I couldn't do anymore. Marcus looked Tyler in the eye. You know what I did for the first 6 months? Tyler shook his head. Absolutely nothing. I sat in a crappy apartment in Detroit, lived off disability payments, and drank beer for breakfast. I didn't shower for days. I didn't call my family. I didn't apply for jobs. I just existed. Badly. Marcus could see recognition in Tyler's eyes. A understanding from someone who had been in a similar place. I told myself I was worthless, Marcus continued. That I was broken. That I had no skills that mattered in the real world. That I was just another damaged veteran society would tolerate but never really want. What changed? Tyler asked quietly. I met someone, Marcus said. A guy named Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. He had lost an arm in Fallujah, and he was working at a VA hospital. He saw me one day when I was there for yet another pointless appointment, and he called me out. Marcus smiled at the memory. He said to me, "You think you're special? You think you're the first soldier to come home feeling lost? You think your pain is unique?" He was not gentle about it. Tyler was listening intently now, leaning forward slightly. Then Rodriguez told me something that changed everything. He said, "You're not damaged. You're untrained. You spent years learning how to be a soldier, but nobody taught you how to be a civilian. You need to retrain yourself, starting from scratch." Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out at a city beginning to show signs of dawn. He helped me understand that discipline isn't about punishment. It's about creating structure that leads to freedom. In the military, I had discipline imposed on me. But in civilian life, I had to learn how to impose it on myself. Tyler was quiet, processing this. Rodriguez helped me create a routine. Nothing dramatic, just small things. Wake up at the same time every day. Make my bed. Exercise. Eat regular meals. Apply for 1 job per day. It seemed stupid at first, like playing house. But gradually, something started to change. Marcus turned back to Tyler. I started feeling like I had some control over my life. Like I could make choices that mattered. Like I could build something instead of just existing. And you became a security specialist, Tyler said. Eventually. But first, I had to figure out what I actually wanted to do. Not what people expected me to do, not what seemed impressive, but what felt meaningful to me. Marcus sat down again, this time closer to Tyler. I realized what I missed most about the military wasn't danger or adrenaline. It was a sense of purpose, a feeling that I was protecting something important. So I started looking for ways to do that in civilian life. Tyler looked at him with an expression Marcus hadn't seen before. Something that might have been hope. Tyler, Marcus said carefully, you asked me if I think you're beyond redemption. The answer is absolutely not. But I also don't think you're going to figure out who you are overnight. I think you're going to have to work at it day by day, one small choice at a time. Tyler nodded slowly. I don't know how. You don't have to know how, Marcus replied. You just have to be willing to try. And you have to be willing to fail sometimes because that's part of the process. Marcus leaned forward. I want to try something with you. Starting tomorrow. A routine. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that will revolutionize your life overnight. Just small things that might help you start to feel like you have some control. Tyler looked skeptical. Like what? Like getting up at the same time every day. Like working out regularly. Like structuring your business meetings so they're actually productive instead of just obligations you dread. Marcus paused, studying Tyler's reaction. And like finding something to do that isn't about you or your money. Something that might help you understand what it feels like to contribute to something bigger. Tyler was quiet for a long moment. You think that would help? I think it might, Marcus said. But more importantly, I think it might help you figure out what you actually want to do with your life. Because right now, you're just reacting to other people's expectations. You're not making your own choices. Tyler looked down at his hands.
I'm scared.
Of what? Of trying and still failing. Of finding out that even with structure and guidance, I'm still just nothing. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. Tyler, you're not nothing. You're untrained. There's a difference. Tyler met his eyes. You really believe that? I know that, Marcus said with conviction, because I've been where you are. And I know it's possible to come back from it. Tyler was quiet for another long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, what do we start with? The first day started at 6 a.m. Marcus arrived at a penthouse to find Tyler already awake, though he looked like he hadn't slept much. They rode in silence down to the building's gym, a state-of-the-art facility Tyler admitted he'd never actually used. I always meant to, Tyler said as they walked among the gleaming equipment. But I don't know what to do with any of this. Marcus had expected this. We'll start simple. Cardio first. They spent 45 minutes on treadmills, Tyler clearly struggling but pushing through without complaint. Marcus watched him carefully, noting how Tyler's natural competitiveness started to emerge once he got into a rhythm. How do you feel? Marcus asked as they finished. Tyler was breathing hard, sweat soaking through his shirt. Terrible, he admitted. But also, different. Like I actually did something. After showers, they went upstairs for breakfast. Marcus had asked Tyler's housekeeper to prepare something specific. Not an elaborate spread, but a simple, healthy meal. I usually just have coffee, Tyler said, looking at the eggs and toast like they were foreign objects. Today you have breakfast, Marcus replied, 8:09 a.m. They went to Tyler's first structured business meeting. Marcus had worked with Patricia Wells to arrange something low stakes, a review of a hotel property Hamilton Industries owned in Chicago. Tyler was nervous, fidgeting with his pen and clearly struggling to focus. But Marcus noticed something else. When Tyler actually paid attention, when he asked questions instead of just nodding along, he showed flashes of real intelligence. The occupancy rate is concerning, Tyler said during one part of the presentation. But have we looked at what the competitors are doing? Are they facing the same problems? Or is it something specific to our property? Patricia Wells looked surprised, but pleased. That's an excellent question. Let me get some comparative data. After the meeting, Tyler looked exhausted but not defeated. I actually understood some of that, he said with wonder. You understood most of it, Marcus corrected. You just haven't been paying attention before. The afternoon brought something Tyler wasn't expecting. Marcus drove him to a veterans shelter on the Lower East Side, a no-frills facility that provided meals and temporary housing for homeless veterans. Tyler looked around nervously as they entered. What are we doing here? We're helping, Marcus said simply. Marcus introduced Tyler to Maria Santos, the shelter's director, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. So you're Tyler Hamilton, she said, shaking his hand. Marcus tells me you want to volunteer. Tyler glanced at Marcus, then back at Maria. Yes, I think so. Good. We need help serving lunch. You know how to work a serving spoon. Tyler nodded, still looking uncertain. For the next 2 hours, Tyler stood behind a serving counter, ladling soup into bowls for a steady stream of veterans. Many were Tyler's age or younger. Some were clearly dealing with mental health issues. Others were just down on their luck. Marcus watched from across the room as Tyler gradually relaxed into a rhythm. He saw a moment when Tyler made a gruff older veteran laugh at something he said. He saw Tyler listen patiently as a young woman explained how she'd ended up at the shelter. Most importantly, he saw Tyler's face when a veteran thanked him for a meal. Not a polite thanks that rich people give each other, but a genuine gratitude from someone who really needed what Tyler was providing. They stayed until after 4 o'clock, helping with cleanup and preparation for dinner. Tyler's expensive clothes were now stained with soup and dishwater, but he didn't seem to notice. "How do you feel?" Marcus asked as they drove back uptown. Tyler was quiet for a long moment. "Useful," he said finally. "For the first time in, I don't know how long, I felt like I was actually useful." That evening, instead of going out to bars or clubs, Tyler stayed home. He read through some business reports he'd been ignoring, ate a regular dinner, and went to bed at a reasonable hour. It was nothing extraordinary. It was just a normal day structured around productive activities instead of destructive ones. But Marcus had seen something in Tyler's eyes that evening, a small spark of pride. Not the false bravado Tyler usually displayed, but a genuine satisfaction from having accomplished something meaningful. Tyler had served 67 meals that day. He'd contributed to a business discussion. He'd exercised beyond his comfort zone. He'd eaten regular meals and gone to bed sober. Small things, basic things, but for someone who'd been spiraling toward self-destruction, they were revolutionary. Marcus sat in his own apartment that night, thinking about a young man who'd asked if he was beyond redemption. He thought about Staff Sergeant Rodriguez and the discipline that had saved his own life. He thought about how redemption wasn't a dramatic moment but a series of small choices made day after day. Tyler Hamilton had a long way to go. There would be setbacks, moments of doubt, days when old patterns reasserted themselves. But for the first time since Marcus had met him, Tyler had shown signs of a man he could become instead of just a boy running from who he was. It was a beginning. And sometimes that was everything. The sound of the alarm clock at 5:45 a.m. no longer felt like torture. Tyler got out of bed with a fluidity that would have been impossible 6 months ago. His movements precise, like someone who had found a sustainable rhythm for his life. The penthouse was quiet as he prepared for his morning workout. The kitchen, once just a rarely used showroom, now showed signs of regular life. A programmed coffee maker, fresh fruit in a bowl, supplements neatly organized in a small basket. Tyler made his protein shake with automatic motions, his body already knowing the routine that had become second nature. Marcus arrived at 6 sharp as he always did. But now his presence was less about surveillance and more about partnership. Tyler greeted him with a nod, grabbing his water bottle and keys. "How are you feeling about today?" Marcus asked as they headed down to the gym. Tyler considered the question. 6 months ago, he would have answered with bravado or nervousness. Now, he could honestly assess his emotional state. "Nervous," he admitted, "but a good kind of nervous. Like when you know something important is about to happen." The workout was intense but controlled. Tyler had developed real strength during months of consistent training, but more importantly, he had learned discipline. He pushed himself hard, but within reasonable limits. He listened to his body, knowing when to push through discomfort and when to back off. As they ran side by side on the treadmill, Tyler's mind wandered to the presentation he would give that afternoon. He had been preparing for weeks, but not in the scattered, last-minute way he used to approach things. Instead, he had been methodical and thoughtful, working through every detail with a care that would have surprised anyone who knew him 6 months ago. After the workout, Tyler showered and dressed with an attention to detail that spoke to how much his relationship with himself had changed. His suit was expensive but understated, his grooming impeccable but not vain. He looked like someone who took himself seriously without being self-absorbed. Breakfast was, as always, eaten together. Tyler actually focused on his food instead of just mindlessly consuming it. He talked about the meeting agenda, asked Marcus's opinion about timing, discussed strategy like someone who genuinely cared about outcomes. "Do you think they'll approve it?" Tyler asked, cutting into his eggs. "I think they'll approve it if you present it well," Marcus replied. "And you will." Tyler smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. 6 months ago, I would have been terrified to even suggest something like this. 6 months ago, you weren't ready to suggest something like this, Marcus said. Now you are. At 8:30, they arrived at Hamilton Industries headquarters. Tyler's relationship with the building had completely transformed. Before, he had dreaded entering it, seeing it as a museum of his failures. Now, he walked through with confidence, greeting staff members by name, stopping for brief but meaningful conversations about ongoing projects. Patricia Wells met them at Tyler's office, carrying a stack of documents and wearing an expression that had evolved from cautious optimism to genuine respect over the past months. Board members started arriving an hour ago, she reported. They're all here, including the external advisors you requested. Tyler nodded, reviewing his notes one final time. His handwriting was neater now, his thoughts more organized. And the financial projections? All prepared and verified, Patricia replied. Tyler, I have to say, the thoroughness you've shown on this project is remarkable. Tyler looked up from his papers. It's important to me, he said simply. Maybe the most important thing I've ever done. Marcus watched the exchange with satisfaction. Tyler's transformation hadn't been dramatic or sudden. It had been gradual, built on small successes that added up to genuine change. A cocky, defensive young man had evolved into someone thoughtful, purposeful, and remarkably mature. At 10 o'clock, Tyler made his way to the boardroom. Marcus followed, taking a seat in the back where he could observe without being intrusive. The room was filled with 12 board members, including some of the most powerful people in American business, hotel magnates, real estate developers, and investment bankers who had known Tyler since childhood. Tyler stood at the head of the conference table, a large screen behind him displaying the first slide of his presentation. For a moment, Marcus saw a flicker of the old Tyler, a boy who had once been terrified of disappointing these people. But then Tyler straightened his shoulders, looked around the table, and began to speak. 6 months ago, Tyler said, his voice clear and steady, many of you were concerned about my ability to contribute meaningfully to Hamilton Industries. You had every right to be concerned. I was reckless, unfocused, and frankly, a liability to the company my parents built. There was no defensiveness in his voice, no anger or resentment, just honesty. Today, I want to speak with you about something I believe can be a defining legacy project. Not just for me, but for Hamilton Industries as a whole. I want to tell you about the Hamilton Foundation for Youth Development. Tyler clicked to the next slide, showing carefully prepared statistics about youth in crisis. Every year in America, approximately 400,000 young people age out of foster care. Of those, only 20% will earn a high school diploma. Only 6% will earn a college degree. Within 2 years, 25% will be homeless, 60% will struggle with unemployment, and 30% will have no health insurance. Marcus watched the faces around the table. They were paying attention, engaged in a way Tyler had never managed before. These aren't just statistics, Tyler continued. These are young people who, through no fault of their own, find themselves without guidance, without support systems, and without hope. They're young people not unlike I was. Lost, angry, and desperately needing someone to believe in them. Tyler moved to stand beside the projection screen, his presence commanding but not aggressive. I've spent the last 6 months learning something crucial about myself and about leadership. I've learned that redemption isn't something that happens to you. It's something you work for, day by day, choice by choice. I've learned that having resources without purpose is meaningless. And I've learned that the most powerful thing you can give someone isn't money. It's a chance to discover who they really are. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. Tyler was speaking with an authenticity that was completely genuine, born from real experience rather than polished talking points. The Hamilton Foundation would operate on 3 core principles, Tyler continued, clicking through slides that detailed his vision. First, mentorship. Every young person in our program would be paired with a trained mentor who commits to a minimum of 2 years. Second, education. We would provide not just financial support for schooling, but practical life skills, job training, and emotional support. Third, purpose. We would help each participant discover their own sense of meaning and contribution. Tyler clicked to a slide showing a proposed budget. I'm requesting authorization to establish this foundation with initial funding of $50 million from Hamilton Industries, supplemented by a personal contribution of $25 million from my own assets. There was a murmur around the table. $75 million was significant, even for a company of Hamilton Industries' size. But more than money, Tyler continued, I'm requesting permission to make this my primary focus within the company. I want to build a program that doesn't just help young people survive, but helps them thrive. I want to create something that would make my parents proud, and that would serve as a model for other companies facing similar challenges. Tyler paused, looking around the room at faces that had known him since childhood. I know some of you might be thinking, why should we trust Tyler Hamilton with a project this important? The answer is simple, because I've been where these young people are. I felt hopelessness, anger, a sense that everyone around me was just waiting for me to fail. And I've been fortunate enough to have someone believe in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Tyler's eyes found Marcus in the back of the room for just a moment before returning to the board. I understand failure because I've failed spectacularly. I understand wasted potential because I've wasted mine. I understand what it feels like to be surrounded by people who care more about what you can do for them than who you are as a person. And I understand what it feels like to find your way back from that darkness. The room was completely silent. Marcus could see that Tyler had their full attention. The Hamilton Foundation isn't just about helping troubled youth, Tyler said, his voice growing stronger. It's about proving that second chances work. It's about demonstrating that with the right support, guidance, and expectations, any young person can find their purpose and contribute meaningfully to society. Tyler clicked to his final slide, which showed a simple image, a photo of him working at a veterans shelter, serving food to homeless veterans. 6 months ago, I was a young man who thought his life was over. Today, I'm standing before you as someone who has found his purpose. I'm not perfect, and I never will be, but I'm committed to using everything I've learned about failure, about recovery, about the power of mentorship, to help other young people find their own paths. Tyler looked around the table one last time. I'm asking not just for your approval, but for your partnership. Help me build something that will outlast all of us. Help me create a legacy that honors the values my parents believed in, while addressing a crisis that affects thousands of young people every year. Tyler returned to his seat, his presentation complete. The room remained silent for a long moment, the weight of his words settling over everyone present. Board Chairman Robert Morrison was the first to speak. Tyler, I have to say, this is not what I expected from you today. This is far more comprehensive and thoughtful than anything I've seen from you before. Other board members began to share their thoughts. Marcus listened as one by one. They expressed not just approval but genuine enthusiasm for Tyler's vision. They asked detailed questions about implementation, partnerships, and measuring success, and Tyler answered each one with knowledge and thoughtfulness that showed how thoroughly he had prepared. Finally, Chairman Morrison called for a vote. All those in favor of establishing a Hamilton Foundation for Youth Development as proposed? Every hand in the room went up. Unanimous approval. The room erupted in applause, more enthusiastic than Marcus had ever heard from this typically reserved group. Tyler's face showed a mixture of relief, joy, and something deeper, a profound sense of accomplishment that was clearly new to him. As the meeting ended and board members came forward to congratulate Tyler personally, Marcus stayed seated, watching a young man who had transformed so completely that he was barely recognizable as the person Marcus had first met. Tyler shook hands, accepted congratulations, and discussed next steps with a professionalism that was natural rather than forced. But through it all, Marcus could see that Tyler was looking for him, scanning the room. When Tyler finally spotted him, their eyes met across the crowded room. Tyler's expression was one of pure gratitude, not just for Marcus's help, but for his belief, for seeing potential when everyone else saw only problems, for refusing to give up when Tyler had been ready to give up on himself. Tyler excused himself from the conversation he was having and made his way through the crowd to where Marcus was standing. "We did it," Tyler said, his voice full of emotion. "You did it," Marcus corrected. "That was all you." Tyler shook his head. "No, that was everything you taught me. Everything you showed me about discipline, about purpose, about not giving up on yourself." Marcus felt a profound satisfaction that went beyond professional pride. He had watched Tyler transform from a self-destructive young man into someone with genuine purpose and direction. He had seen what second chances could accomplish when combined with hard work and unwavering support. "So what's next?" Marcus asked. Tyler smiled, a smile that spoke to a future full of possibility rather than a past full of regret. "Next, we change some lives," Tyler said, "starting with mine." The October morning sun shone on the glass and steel facade of the new building in the Lower East Side, its rays creating golden patterns on the windows that reflected the energy of a city that never sleeps. A crowd had gathered on the sidewalk in front of the main entrance, where a red ribbon stretched between two polished pillars, waiting for the moment that would mark the official opening of the Hamilton Foundation for Youth Guidance. Tyler Hamilton stood in front of the building, adjusting his tie with a precision that had become natural after a year of structured living. But even now, Marcus could see a slight tremor in his hands, not from fear, but from the deep emotional significance of what this day represented. Tyler had traded his designer suits for something more understated but equally sharp, his appearance reflecting a man who had learned to command respect through competence rather than intimidation. Marcus was positioned slightly behind Tyler, his own transformation less visible but no less profound. He now wore a crisp navy suit with a small foundation pin on his lapel, his role having evolved from bodyguard to something he had never expected to become, head of security and youth mentorship for an organization that was about to change countless lives. The crowd was diverse. Board members from Hamilton Industries, local politicians, social workers, journalists, and most importantly, a small group of young people who would be among the foundation's first participants. Marcus watched Tyler scan the faces, his expression showing none of the nervousness that would have paralyzed him just over a year ago. Patricia Wells approached with a clipboard, her efficiency now directed toward a cause that had given her own career new meaning. "Tyler, we're ready whenever you are," she said, though her tone carried a warmth that had developed over months of watching him transform. "Are my parents here?" Tyler asked, looking through the crowd. Marcus spotted them immediately, James and Eleanor Hamilton, standing near the front with expressions that mixed pride with amazement. They had watched their son's transformation with a wonder that never seemed to fade, still occasionally looking at him as if they couldn't quite believe what they were seeing. "They're here," Marcus said softly, "and they're proud." Tyler nodded, taking a deep breath that was less about calming nerves and more about centering himself for what he knew would be a deeply emotional moment. Mayor Christine Rodriguez stepped forward to introduce Tyler, her voice carrying over the crowd through a small sound system. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce Tyler Hamilton, founder and director of the Hamilton Foundation for Youth Guidance." As Tyler approached the microphone, Marcus could see a confident posture, a steady gaze, a presence that commanded attention without demanding it. This was not a defensive young man trying to prove himself, but someone who had found his purpose and was ready to share it. "1 year ago," Tyler began, his voice clear and strong, "I stood in a boardroom and asked a group of successful business leaders to take a chance on me. I asked them to trust me with a significant investment, not because of my track record, but because of my potential." Tyler paused, looking out at the crowd that was listening with complete attention. "Today, I want to talk about why second chances matter. Not just for the young people we'll be serving, but for all of us. Because the truth is, everyone at some point needs someone to believe in them when they can't believe in themselves." Marcus felt something tighten in his chest as Tyler continued. 15 months ago, I was a young man who thought his life was over. I was surrounded by people who cared more about what I could do for them than who I was as a person. I was lost, angry, and convinced I was nothing more than a disappointment to everyone who had ever tried to help me. Tyler's voice grew stronger, more personal. "My parents, in their wisdom and love, hired a man named Marcus Thompson to be my security consultant. Officially, his job was to protect me from external threats, from people who might want to harm me or take advantage of me because of my family's wealth. Marcus watched as Tyler's eyes found his in the crowd. But Marcus Thompson was hired to protect me from the world, and he ended up saving me from myself. An emotion in Tyler's voice was unmistakable, raw and honest in a way that would have been impossible for the old Tyler to express publicly. Marcus didn't save me by making my life easier. He saved me by making it harder. He demanded that I show up, not just physically but mentally and emotionally. He refused to accept my excuses, my self-pity, or my belief that I was beyond redemption. Tyler's posture straightened as he continued. He taught me that discipline isn't about punishment. It's about creating a structure that leads to freedom. He showed me that real strength isn't about avoiding challenges, but about facing them with integrity. Most importantly, he proved to me that transformation is possible, but only if you're willing to do the work. Marcus could see several people in the crowd wiping away tears, moved by Tyler's honesty and vulnerability. The Hamilton Foundation for Youth Guidance exists because I learned that the most powerful thing you can give someone isn't money or opportunity. It's a chance to discover who they really are. It's someone who believes in their potential even when they can't see it themselves. Tyler gestured toward the building behind him. This facility will serve as a home base for young people who are aging out of foster care, struggling with homelessness, or simply trying to find their direction in life. We'll provide not just resources, but mentorship, structure, and most importantly, a belief that their lives have value and purpose. The crowd was completely silent, hanging on every word. We'll operate on principles that changed my life. Accountability without judgment, structure without rigidity, and support without enabling. Every young person who comes through our doors will be paired with a mentor who commits to a minimum of 2 years. They'll receive job training, educational support, and life skills coaching. But more than that, they'll receive something money can't buy, a chance to rewrite their own story. Tyler looked directly at Marcus again. Marcus Thompson taught me that sometimes the greatest protection you can offer someone is helping them find their own strength. That's what we're going to do here. We're going to help young people discover that they are not defined by their circumstances, but by their choices. We're going to prove that second chances work. Tyler reached for a large pair of scissors that Patricia handed him, positioning them above the red ribbon. Today, we're opening more than a building. We're opening a door to possibility. We're creating a place where young people can learn that their past doesn't determine their future, and that with the right support, anyone can find their purpose. With a decisive motion, Tyler cut the ribbon. The crowd erupted in applause, more enthusiastic and heartfelt than Marcus had ever heard. The building's doors opened, and people began flowing inside to tour a facility that had been designed with every detail carefully considered. Marcus followed the crowd inside, watching as Tyler moved through the space with obvious pride. The interior was warm but professional, with comfortable seating areas, modern computer labs, a fully equipped kitchen for life skills training, and several conference rooms where mentoring sessions would take place. Tyler stopped in a central gathering area where a small group of teenagers waited nervously. These were the first participants, young people who had been carefully selected for a pilot program. "Everyone, I want you to meet Marcus Thompson," Tyler said, introducing him to the group. "Marcus will be overseeing our security and mentorship programs, but more importantly, he's a reason this foundation exists." Marcus stepped forward, studying the faces of the young people who reminded him so much of a lost, angry young man he had met just over a year ago. They were defensive, hopeful, scared, and trying to appear tougher than they felt. "It's good to meet all of you," Marcus said, his voice carrying a warmth that had developed over months of working with Tyler. "Tyler's told me about each of you, and I'm looking forward to working together." As Marcus spoke briefly with the group, he noticed Tyler pull aside a particularly sullen-looking teenager, a boy named David who was 17 and had aged out of foster care 2 weeks ago. "David," Tyler said, sitting down beside him on a comfortable couch. "I know you don't want to be here." David looked at him with open hostility. "Man, you don't know nothing about me. You're just some rich kid playing charity worker." Marcus watched from across the room as Tyler nodded calmly, not taking offense or getting defensive. "You're right," Tyler said. I am a rich kid. I've had advantages you've never had. But you know what? 6 months ago, I was sitting in a room feeling exactly like you feel right now. Angry, suspicious, convinced that everyone around me was just waiting for me to fail. David's expression shifted slightly, curiosity overriding hostility. The difference between you and me isn't money, Tyler continued. It's that I had someone who refused to give up on me, even when I had given up on myself. Someone who saw potential in me when all I could see was failure. Tyler leaned forward, his voice taking on an intensity that was completely genuine. I'm not here to save you, David. I'm here to help you save yourself. But that only works if you're willing to try. If you're willing to show up, to do the work, to believe that your life can be more than just surviving. Marcus watched as Tyler's words seemed to penetrate David's defenses. He could see a moment when something shifted in the boy's expression, a flicker of hope that he was trying to suppress. What if I try and nothing changes? David asked quietly. Tyler smiled, an expression that carried the weight of his own experience. Then we try again, and again, and again until we figure it out. Because that's what people do for each other. They don't give up. Marcus felt a profound sense of completion watching this interaction. Tyler was now embodying every principle Marcus had tried to teach him: patience, compassion, unwavering belief in human potential, and an understanding that real change happens through consistent, daily choices. Over the next hour, Marcus watched Tyler work with other participants, his natural empathy enhanced by hard-won wisdom. He saw Tyler explaining the importance of structure, helping a young woman understand how to prepare for job interviews, and listening with genuine attention to stories of struggle and hope. Later, as the crowd began to disperse and the day wound down, Marcus found himself standing alone in the foundation's main gathering area. The afternoon sun streamed through large windows, casting long shadows across comfortable furniture and modern equipment that would soon be filled with young people learning to rebuild their lives. Tyler appeared beside him, loosening his tie with a gesture that was tired but satisfied. How does it feel? Marcus asked. Tyler considered the question, looking around at a space they had created together. It feels like a beginning, he said finally. Like everything that happened before was just preparation for this. Marcus nodded, understanding exactly what Tyler meant. Sometimes the most difficult experiences in life are actually training for something greater, even if you can't see it at the time. Marcus, Tyler said, his voice carrying a weight that suggested he'd been thinking about this for some time. I need you to know something. When you first started working with me, I thought you were just another person trying to control my life. I didn't understand that you were actually trying to give me back control over it. Marcus looked at Tyler, seeing not a lost young man who had needed saving, but an adult who had found his purpose and was ready to share it with others. You didn't need saving, Marcus said quietly. You needed training. You needed someone to believe in you while you learned how to believe in yourself. Tyler smiled, an expression that spoke to a future full of possibility rather than a past full of regret. That's what we're going to do here, Tyler said, gesturing toward the building around them. We're going to help young people understand that they don't need saving, they need training. They need structure, support, and someone who believes in their potential, even when they can't see it themselves. Marcus watched as Tyler walked over to where David was still sitting, still looking uncertain but no longer hostile. Tyler sat down beside him again, beginning what Marcus knew would be a long process of building trust and demonstrating consistency. As Marcus observed this interaction, he reflected on how dramatically both their lives had changed. He had been hired to protect Tyler from external threats but had ended up helping him overcome internal ones. Tyler had been viewed as a liability to his family's company but had transformed into someone who was now creating opportunities for others. Marcus thought about Staff Sergeant Rodriguez and the conversation that had changed his own life. He thought about a discipline that creates freedom, about a structure that leads to genuine achievement. He thought about how sometimes the greatest protection you can offer someone is not shielding them from challenges, but helping them develop the strength to face those challenges with integrity. Watching Tyler work with David, Marcus realized that this was how healing happens, not through dramatic interventions, but through consistent, daily choices to show up, to try again, to believe in possibility even when outcomes are uncertain. The Hamilton Foundation for Youth Guidance was more than a charitable organization. It was proof that second chances work, that transformation is possible, and that with the right support, anyone can find their purpose and contribute meaningfully to society. As the sun set over the Lower East Side, casting a golden glow over the foundation's windows, Marcus felt a deep satisfaction that went beyond professional accomplishment. He had watched Tyler transform from a self-destructive young man into someone with genuine purpose and direction. More importantly, he had seen Tyler learn to pass that transformation on to others. Sometimes the greatest protection you can offer someone is helping them find their own strength. Marcus had learned that lesson, taught it to Tyler, and now Tyler was teaching it to a new generation of young people who desperately needed to know that their lives have value and their futures hold promise. It was, Marcus thought, a perfect circle of redemption, mentorship, and hope.
If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. These other stories will also move you. Click to keep watching.